never seen such desolation. I think we drove for a mile and there wasn't a building hardly standing.
Nobody knew what was going on. They called the situation fluid, but fluid means that nobody knew anything.
It was different. And if I had done something else, I don't know what I would have done.
We're talking today with Bill Karpowicz of Grand Rapids, Michigan, and the interviewer is James Smither of the Grand Valley State University Veterans History Project. Okay, Bill, start us off with some background. To begin with, where and when were you born?
I was born February 10th, 1924 in the town of Muskegon, Michigan, which is probably 35 miles west of Grand Rapids. I lived on Park Street, and I moved to Dale Avenue across from St. Michael's Church. That's where I went to school.
All right.
And 3 blocks away was Muskegon High. That's where I took my high school education.
Okay. Now, what did your family do for a living when you were growing up?
My dad was a shoe repairman, and he also worked in a foundry. And my mother worked at a mill called Amazon Mills.
Okay. Now, did your father have a regular job during the 30s, or was it kind of on and off?
No, it was, he had a shoe repair shop during that time, and later on he started working in a foundry.
Okay. Now, is that sort of when industry picked up, get closer to 1940, or was that just because the shoe repair wasn't making enough money, or?
No, he worked in a foundry till he got a hernia.
Okay.
Then he worked full-time as a shoe repair.
Okay. So you kind of stayed in that business. All right. And how many kids were in the family?
It was 4 girls and me.
Okay. All right. Now, do you remember how you heard about Pearl Harbor?
Yeah, we were at 2 blocks from our house. It was a pool hall. And we hung around there, and then we heard about them bombing Pearl Harbor, and everybody said, "Where's Pearl Harbor?" Never heard of it. Never been out of Grand Rapids, outside maybe Lansing. But that's how we heard about it, and that was in December 7th when we heard about it. And then February 18th when I joined.
Mm-hmm. So that was right after you turned 18?
Right after.
Okay. And why did you pick the Marine Corps?
Well, I was in the National Guards, and I was with them for about a year or so, and that didn't quite appeal to me. So after I left there, then I thought, well, I was going to join one of the services. I was going to start with the Navy. If not, I was going to go to the Air Force. If they didn't take me, I was going to go to the Marine Corps. Well, my cousins in Muskegon said that you'll never make the Marine Corps, you're too skinny. I made the Marine Corps.
Mm-hmm. Now, did you go there first?
Pardon?
Did you go to the Marine Corps first in the end?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I did.
All right. Now, tell me a little bit about the National Guard experience. When did you join the Guard?
I don't remember the exact date, but it was in G Company, 126th Infantry, 32nd Division in Muskegon. They were mostly the Great Lakes states.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in there. We went to training at Camp Elliot, Wisconsin, little town of Sparta, and we stayed up there a couple of weeks. And came back, and that's when they started mobilizing them in the latter part of '39, I think it was.
1940.
Yeah, when they started mobilizing them. And that's when I got out.
Okay, and at that point you were still pretty young, right?
Oh yeah, I was about 16 and a half, maybe 17.
Yeah, so then we're going to take you down to Louisiana and send you to New Guinea at that point, which is where they wound up. But
they thought.
All right, so you tried that, but you had at least a little. Now, did any of the stuff that you learned in the Guard have any value when you got into the Marines?
Yes, any military does. From one to the other, no matter what branch you're in, if you switch branches, the other branch you remember, you know things about the branch. It always helps a little bit.
Mm-hmm. All right. Okay. Now, where did you do your Marine boot camp?
I did it at Camp Elliot, San Diego, Marine Corps Base in San Diego.
Okay. Now, what kind of facility do they have at that point?
They had 2-man tents. 2-man tents, and they had a big washroom where it was what you would say, there's 13 stools here, 13 stools there, very high buddy and all that along the way.
All right. So they really didn't have the built-up facilities yet for as many men as they were training at that point?
No, they did not.
All right. What did the training consist of there?
It was mostly rifle practice, bayonet practice, pistol practice, hikes, and anything that would pertain to combat. Mm-hmm. Obstacle courses and things like that. It's not, at that time, it was not like the training they give them now. At that time, they had to train you and get you out of there. Mm-hmm. There was a war going on.
Right. And how much emphasis do they put on discipline?
Tough. It was tough. They, for some reason, it was tough, but you respected the people though. And then when time goes by, then you know why. But at that time you figure, well, no, they don't know what they're talking about. But then you realize later on why they have the discipline. It's like they say in the boot camp, they always say you're not a former Marine. They say once a Marine, always a Marine. Even now they say that.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a good discipline there. But we had 3 good instructors. We had Sergeant Bernetti, Corporal Covey, and Corporal Rule, and they were good. They treat us like humans, but if we screwed up, we weren't human anymore. So they're good people though.
Now, what would they do if somebody screws up?
Well, they do like maybe they have to scrub the deck down with a toothbrush or something like that. You know, just little things like that, just enough to tick the guy off.
Mm-hmm. And how easy or hard was it for you to adjust to that kind of life?
It wasn't that bad though. I had like that time I was in the National Guards. Of course, National Guards, I think they met once a month, and I don't think it was that bad though.
Mm-hmm. All right. And then how long did the training in California last?
I think it lasted about 12 weeks.
Okay. Now, while you were there, did you just stay on the base, or could you go into town?
Nope, no, there was no liberty at that time. No, we stayed right there as 2 man to a tent, and that's where we stayed.
Okay. And then after that training is done, what do they do with you?
After that, we went to, they asked what specialties did we have. Well, I didn't have any specialty. I worked in print, I took printing in high school, but that's not a specialty. We had people that were radio men, telegraph, and Morse codes, they knew that. Some were cooks and bakers, they went there. Some were mechanics, they went to mechanics. And I just went to the infantry at Camp Elliot, about 18 miles north of San Diego.
Mm-hmm. And then when you finished with that, where do you go?
It was Camp Elliot, and then from Camp Elliot we went to, they broke us up. While at Camp Elliot, we had the 2nd Marine Division, I think it was, came back from Iceland, and they were with us, and then they broke us up, and they sent us to part to New River, North Carolina. It became like the nuclear of 3rd Marine Division. Mm-hmm. And then we became 3rd Division.
Okay, so you go off to North Carolina. It's the area, it's the camp that becomes Camp Lejeune eventually?
Yes, yeah. Yes it did.
Okay, now what was that place like?
Quonset huts, stove in the middle. If you're cold at night, hot during the day, and if you had a bunk by the stove, you kept warm. If you didn't have one by the stove, it's kind of cool at the ends. And our training there was entirely different. Our training there was a jungle training, because it was kind of rough country around there. And I think about 40 men to a tent, 40 men to a Quonset hut. Mm-hmm. And there was not much around there. That when it rained, and it got pretty well wet. It was like all muck around there. But it was training for the future, what they had planned for you.
All right. So were you training at all in kind of marshy or swampy ground?
It was swampy there.
All right. At that point, were they giving you any kind of amphibious training, or does that come later? Or?
No, we had, think of it, at Camp Elliot, we had some amphibious training, where you'd mock landings. You go in a boat and jump over the side. You know, at Coronado, I think Coronado Island, or San Clemente Island, mm-hmm. And just a lot of mock training at that time. And in North Carolina, or yep. New River, it was entirely different. There's a lot of swampland around there, so a little bit different training. A lot of mosquitoes in there.
Okay, and then when did you get to North Carolina, roughly? Was that?
Oh, geez.
About May
I would say probably about maybe June.
Okay, and then how long are you there?
We're there till November that year.
Okay. Now, during that time, now the 1st Marine Division is going into action by then on Guadalcanal and so forth. Yeah. Now, are they keeping you informed of that while you're in the camp, or? No,
the way we heard about Guadalcanal was somebody had a newspaper. That's what we heard about about Guadalcanal. And somebody said, "Where's Guadalcanal?" We didn't know where this place mm-hmm. was at. We were a bunch of dummies that went overseas and all that. I didn't even know Pearl Harbor. We were at the pool hall playing pool, and all of a sudden said about bombing Pearl Harbor. We don't know where those places were at.
Yeah, and something in the Solomon Islands. I mean, who would have heard of that?
Never heard. We never know what they were. We heard of Hawaiian Islands.
Yeah.
But we didn't know about Pearl Harbor in there. Because who could, at that time, who traveled? Who could afford traveling?
All right. Now, while you're training, what kind of weapons did you train on?
We had a Springfield Rifle 03, bolt action, and that's when we went to. We went to New River, North Carolina. The switch, they gave us the M1 Garand, eight shot, I think 8-shot clip.
Yeah, it's a semi-automatic, so you can fire faster. Yeah. All right. And then, did you train with other weapons too?
Oh yeah, we had pistols, we had machine guns, mortars, and you had to train on them all.
All right. And then initially, what kind of weapon are you just a rifleman at this point?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. And then at what point do you find out that you're going to get shipped out?
I went home on furlough in November of '42, and I went by train to Muskegon. And coming back, I was there about 4 days. Coming back, I was supposed to fly, and then I got on a plane as far as Cleveland. I got bumped off the plane, and I went to. I took a bus to New River, North Carolina. I went to see the captain, and normally I was over leave, but they didn't say anything about it. So my next stop was to jump on a truck with my full uniform on, because that's what I went down there with, and the other guys were packed, ready to go. They had all my stuff back. Then we went to Camp Pendleton.
All right. And how did you get to Camp Pendleton?
It was by train.
Okay, so it's a train all the way across the country.
Boy, all the way. We had no planes at that time for transportation.
Okay. And then, so what were those train rides like? Because you had to get out to Camp Elliot in the first place, and then over to New River and back. What do you remember about those trips?
Well, the first trip was from Detroit, Michigan to San Diego. We got to the train depot of San Diego, and there was a Marine Corps sergeant. I swear to hell, he was like about 18 feet tall and weighed about 800 pounds. When he bellowed out, I think everybody would be ready to turn around and go back. But we all stuck it out. But on a train, I went back and forth, I don't know how many times by train.
Well, how long would that take to get across the country?
Oh, geez. I remember one state. We got into Texas, on the east end of Texas, probably about 9, 10 o'clock at night. That morning, 6 o'clock, we're just leaving Texas. So you can imagine how long that would be for the whole trip.
Okay.
About a 4-day trip, maybe 5-day trip from Detroit to San Diego and back again.
Now, what do you do for food or for sleeping or things like that for that amount of time?
Well, on the train, we had upper and lowers bunks, one man to a bunk. And they had food aboard there for us, and as far as entertainment goes, they had nothing for us.
Right.
Outside, guys were playing cards or playing crap or something like that. They had that for them, but other than that, they had nothing for entertainment.
And they let you get off the train when it stopped?
Just to like stop and walk around and come back on again. That's about it.
All right. Okay. So now you've been shipped back to Camp Pendleton. Now we've gotten to the very end of 1942. Do you get more training there, or do they just load you up and send you out?
Camp Pendleton was the place we stayed at was huts on. They had like maybe half a company would stay on there. There's 2 floors, and they were on cement blocks. They weren't quite complete. That was part of the Santa Margarita Ranch. I heard stories that it was leased from the Spanish, whoever leased it for like a 99-year lease from the government, whatever it was. And there we had a lot of hills, terrible hills, and we had training on hills, up and down, up and down. Then we had a lot of water training, and you had to qualify to swim, and they made sure you qualified. So.
Now, did you know how to swim when you went in?
And I didn't know much about it. I lived by the lake of Muskegon, but I very seldom went to swimming. I lived in Muskegon Lake was there, and Lake Michigan was there, not too far away, but we just hung around with each other at the pool hall mostly, and that was about it.
Okay, so the wrong kind of pool then.
Oh, well, we made it okay though.
All right.
But it was, they would have us on the, take us on probably a 10-man little boat, and take us on the ocean there, and they'd say jump off. And that was it. And that's how you learn how to swim.
Okay. All right. Now, did they do training exercises where you actually would climb into landing craft and then land on a beach?
Yes, they did.
All right.
Yes, they did.
And was that the first time you had done that, or had you done that earlier?
I believe that was about the first time.
Okay.
First time we did.
So what you were doing at Camp Elliot a lot earlier didn't have all the landing craft and all the
I really don't remember that. No, I don't think we had swimming at the and the pool down there. But I remember up and down the boats.
Okay.
I remember that.
All right. And so how do they actually get you? How do they get you into the landing craft?
Well, we were aboard ship, and you go down the net, and get in there, and you go out to take a spin around the lake and jump off, and that's it.
All right. Now, could loading onto the landing craft be dangerous? I mean, if you have a lot of waves, or
It could be. It could be. Of course, in the Pacific, it's not as bad as the Atlantic. They have waves there, but I don't think they're as bad as the Atlantic. They tell me there are terrific waves over there. And heading from San Diego or from Camp Elliot to New Zealand, we have some people that stayed in the bunks the whole time. That they could not. Once they move around, they start vomiting on account of seasickness. But it didn't bother most of us, though.
okay. But was the weather on that trip mostly good?
It was good. Yeah, we had no rain, nothing
Okay.
like, but it was like a 21-day trip.
All right. Okay. And what kind of ship were you on?
It was the Matson Lines. Matson Lines used to be a lure line. It used to be a tour ship, and we were told that we had freedom of the ship. We could walk around there. That the one deck was once around was a half mile, so it showed how big the ship was.
And was a whole regiment on board, or more than that?
They had we heard there was 6,000 troops around there.
Okay. That's a lot of guys. All right. Did they have some kind of ceremony when you crossed the equator?
Yes, they did. They had King Neptune's court, and they picked certain people from our company to be not part of the court, but part of their whatever the court, like a jester or something like that. And the rest of us, we were told don't go on deck, so we didn't go on deck. And after they had the ceremony, it was crossing the equator. After they had the ceremony, we were given a card saying we crossed the equator, part of King Neptune's court and all that. I might still have it at home. I don't know.
All right. Now, the guys who were picked, were they basically hazed? Did they do strange things to
They
them?
are kind of what they call little oddballs. Those are the ones they picked to go before the court.
All right. Because in some of the other accounts of people, if it was smaller numbers of men on the ship, all the new guys, all the, what did they call it? The pollywogs, I guess they called them. They all had to go through it and get things dumped on them and other kinds of issues.
That was
stuff.
like we were not able to. They did not tell us to see it. We had to stay below deck.
Yeah,
when
well,
they had
there
the
were probably
ceremony.
too many of you
All
to do too much.
We could have flooded the deck spot.
Right.
We
Now,
should-
did the ship sail by itself, or were you in a convoy?
We had no convoy.
Okay.
No convoy at all.
Did you zigzag across?
Yes, and they had. They could not throw anything overboard during daytime. Nighttime they could. Nighttime they throw all the garbage overboard. By the time morning came, it spread all over the ocean.
Right.
So, no, we went by ourselves. We had no escort of any kind.
Okay.
Of course, at that time it was not like the Pacific, or not like the Atlantic. Atlantic, they had German submarines all over. Even at the east coast of the states, they had German submarines
Right.
over there.
Yeah. So it wasn't as dangerous in that part of the Pacific by then.
But it wasn't that bad over there.
Okay. And then when do you get to New Zealand?
Oh, I'd say probably in February.
Okay. February
think-
43, roughly. All right.
Yeah, I think it was that.
And do you remember where they landed you? In Auckland or Wellington
I
or
think it was
someplace else?
Auckland where they
Okay.
landed. It's Auckland, New Zealand.
right.
That's in North Island.
Right. And then what did they do with you once you got there?
Well, then we started our training. We went to a little town of Waikaraki or something like that. There was nothing in there. We had two-man huts. And like I said, there's nothing in that little town. We had our Liberty. Half the company would go on Liberty and half would have to stay behind. And we went to Liberty in Auckland because there's nothing in the little town.
Right.
So they had a truck would take us to Auckland and truck would pick us up, bring it back.
Okay. And how did they treat you in Auckland?
They're good.
Okay.
They respected the servicemen there. Till they had, we had some cocky always wanted to fight. So then they started nailing us.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one thing about Auckland, the bars, they had room for the women and room for the men. And they not mingled to each other. So as far as the bars go, there was not that kind of fights then.
Mm-hmm.
So which is, I think, pretty good.
Okay, well, it may have helped you stay out of trouble. I don't know.
It would, yeah. The only time I guess they get out of trouble is when they'd get kind of bombed out of shape, you know, and want to fight somebody on the street there.
Right.
You know, for some reason, I think the Marines think they're invincible, and nobody can hurt them.
All right. Now, what did the training in New Zealand consist of?
That was they got a lot of mountains there. We had one hike was 25 miles in one day, and we had a 75-mile hike that took 3 days. And the 75-mile hike, before we went on it, we had to take 3 socks. One they fill up with sugar, rice, and raisins, and that was our food for 3 days. We did get water. So some guys knew how to prepare that. They'd like boil the rice, like us off, put the raisins in there. So we survived it. So it wasn't that bad. Now if somebody told me to take a sock and fill it up, like, what are you talking about?
All right. Now, were they trying to tell you anything about how the Japanese fought or operated, or was this just conditioning still?
This was conditioning mostly. But they say they had a lot of hills there, a lot of hills.
Okay. All right. And now, what's your next stop after New Zealand?
After New Zealand, we went to Guadalcanal for training. And we were there for, I don't know how many months it was, but there's another town, another place that was a place where if it rained, if you ran fast enough, you could get to your billeting area. And sometimes with the rain, we watched it be raining over here, but we wouldn't get any rain. It'd be raining here, but they wouldn't be getting rain over there, just like it just dropped down in spurts. And they had coconut groves there. We'd cut some of the coconut trees down, and we made air raid shelters. Hold about maybe a dozen people, dug them in the ground, put that over the top of that. And we get a lot of air raids during the night. Like 3 o'clock in the morning, the Japanese planes would fly over.
Okay.
So there you are.
Were you close to Henderson Field and the main American base there? Was there an airstrip near where you were?
Yeah, there was. I don't know if it was named Henderson at that time or not. But there was. I remember the airstrip there, but I remember if it was.
Yeah.
But I know they named it after Henderson. I know
Right. Well, the original air base that they set up and took over when the Marines first landed was called Henderson. By the time you're there, though, we control the island, and there probably are multiple air bases now, because that's a main operating base now for the Americans in the Solomons. So you might have been at Henderson, you might have been at a different one, but you were close enough to an airfield that there were air raids coming by regularly.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
There was there.
Now, when the air raids came, would they be a lot of planes at once or just a few?
Boy, when they put the light on them, you only see one plane up there. But it's like it's awfully, I don't know what you'd call it, but they'll come by like 2 o'clock in the morning, and we all had to run in our holes at that time. And one that ran in first, one that ran in last, he got the best seat.
All right. Now, did the raids do much damage, or were they pretty small?
No, they didn't. No, they just were just flying over.
Okay. Now, were you going into the jungles now on Guadalcanal to train?
And they had, there was a lot of jungles there. They had a lot of mosquitoes there. And they had alligators, snakes. Of course, we didn't see it, we heard about them. But they had, it was typical jungle.
Right. Okay. Now, did they, at this point, I mean, is anybody yet telling you sort of how the Japanese fight or what they do?
Yes, we had training there. They'd have a place dug out. We'd be sitting in there, and they'd be firing different weapons. We had to guess which was ours, which one was theirs. The rifles, the pistols, the machine guns, and you had to distinguish which one was which. They did that quite a bit over there.
Okay. And did you see anything of the local population on Guadalcanal? Any of the natives?
We seen some of the natives there, and in fact, some of the guys try to climb the coconut trees like the natives did. They'd put a rope around their ankles, and they'd climb up the tree. And some of us guys tried it. We couldn't do it. And then when they get a coconut, they had a stick that they shaved down to a point, and they put the stick between their toes, and they'd run the bark over it. And in no time at all, they'd have the thing skinned. And in no time at all, they'd have it broken open. And we tried it. We couldn't do it.
All right. Now, while you're on Guadalcanal, I don't know, how built up is the place? Do they have a lot of facilities for you now? Whether it's mess halls or entertainment or anything else?
They had that, but as far as entertainment, no, they didn't have much of that.
Okay, so you didn't have the USO coming through, or
No, they
stuff like
did
that?
on New Zealand. They did,
Okay,
and I don't remember much about Guadalcanal, whether they did or not.
all right. Now, when you're on Guadalcanal, now you're in swamps and jungle with the mosquitoes and so forth. What were they doing about malaria?
We had to take a pill called Adabrin. Adabrin pill is supposed to fight malaria. So we went to Guadalcanal, and it was a little yellow pill. So we got there, we were white-skinned, we got there, we seen all the yellowed Marines over there from that pill that they took. So,
Well, did you take your Adabrin?
oh yeah, you had to take it. They come by and they flip it in your mouth and drink of water, and that's it.
All right. Now, did you ever catch malaria?
I never had it, no.
Okay, so it probably worked.
It might have worked, yeah.
Yeah, all right. Now, about how long do you think you spent on Guadalcanal before you went anywhere else?
I really don't remember. I remember how long we spent on there. I know we had the training there, then we went from there to Bougainville. I don't remember how long it was on
Okay.
there.
I think that's sort of the fall of '43 by the time we landed at Bougainville. So it's...
Yeah, I think it landed. It was October,
Oh,
and
okay.
I think it was October. We got there like maybe 3-4 days later. Our company did. Our regiment.
Okay, so you weren't in the first wave
No,
or whatever
no,
of
no.
landing there. Okay.
No.
By the time you got there, what do you remember about landing there? Because this is your first time actually going into some kind of battle or combat area. What do you remember about that landing?
Well, we were aboard. I can't name the ship. It wasn't that big of a one that pulled in there, but the one next to us, they either hit a landmine or a plane came in, and they got struck by the plane, because we had part of our company was on that ship. But as far as I know, there was nobody hurt. I remember our armor, the guy used to repair our weapons. He was on that ship, and he got off okay. He was all wet when he got in there, because it wasn't that far offshore that they got hit. I remember a plane coming in one day that the guy bailed out. You see him bailing out, landed in the water, and no one came in. And when he got to the field over there, they had a mop out the back. Of one, I can't name it the plane, but the tail gunner was underneath, and two people on top. And they had to mop that out, because that's where he got shot. And what else was there? Like I said, that was jungle, all jungle.
Okay. Now, for that, did you go in landing craft and land that way? When you're going into Bougainville?
It was a landing craft we got in with.
Okay.
But they had, I got a little incident on Bougainville. You know what Brussels sprouts are? Okay. So we're sitting there, about 4 or 5 of us, and here comes a lizard. So one guy whacks the lizard over the head, another guy cuts the gut, and there's little Brussels sprouts come out. So, I mean, but from that day on, I look at Brussels sprouts, think about that poor little lizard up there.
Who knew they had Brussels sprouts on Bougainville,
Yeah.
but or something that looked like them.
It looked like them.
All right. Now, was there much going on in Bougainville? I mean, was there fighting going on
Yes,
someplace?
there was. There still was fighting going on.
Okay.
In fact, this guy from Chicago, I think his first name was Chester, his last name was Kilbasa. He was with me in the hole, and it was raining that night, and they told us about the Japs are going to come, and next morning, we didn't do any shooting or anything, but we seen they had split-toed shoes. We seen the footprints around there, so we knew they were there. But I don't remember ever seeing a Jap on Bougainville, but I seen guys that were wounded. That came back that were wounded.
So somebody was in action, but was your company basically in reserve, or?
We were like in reserve.
Okay. Or maybe holding the part of a line someplace, but you weren't going and attacking and getting in trouble at that point. Okay. Now, when you're there, I mean, did the enemy have any artillery? Did they shoot back at you at all?
No, you know, I don't remember. I mean, we had it. We had howitzers that we would shoot on them, but I don't remember. I really don't remember that.
Yeah. It's not a place where they were putting up a really big fight. They held a base on the other end of the island that they stayed in through the war.
It was kind of a peaceful island, you might say, compared to the other ones.
Yep. Okay. So sort of your first introduction to going into a combat area, but that part wasn't that bad. So your company doesn't take any casualties, or?
No, I don't remember any casualties in our company.
All right. And then after a while, they decide you don't have anything else to do, so they move
So
you.
they sent us back. Sent us back to Guadalcanal.
All right.
I don't remember how we got back. I know we didn't swim.
Yeah, probably another ship. Yeah. Okay. And then, is it just back to the same old routine on Guadalcanal again?
Same thing all over again.
All right. And then, what do you do next?
Well, from Guadalcanal, then we went to aboard LSTs.
Mm-hmm.
And the LST we had, they had tanks on there. They had trucks on there, 6x trucks. They had, I believe our entire company was on there. And some slept below deck. Some slept on top of deck. I slept under a truck that was on top deck. There just wasn't any room over there. We slept any place you could sleep, you slept.
Right.
And when they had air raid or something like that, they said everybody below, and the guys that slept on top said, no, we're going to stay here. What are you going to do? So we stayed over there, and I forget how many, we were on there quite a few days. And then we went from there, I say maybe a good month we were on board the LST. And from there we went to Marshall Islands, to Kwajalein for training.
Okay.
And it was mostly swimming. And the Kwajalein Island where we were at, it was like about maybe you'd run and you'd be on the other side, like maybe 100 yards or something like that.
Yeah, because Kwajalein, it's a coral atoll, so you've got little small islets around on the ring of coral.
And one of the guys, we had to wear our shoes when we went in the water. So one guy got coral poisoning.
Mm-hmm.
So they took him off, and they said, we all said goodbye, you're never going to come back and all. Well, here you come back a month later, you came back to us.
Mm-hmm.
Because I guess at that time, if you were assigned to a company, you came back to that company no matter what happened. And they tell me that the Army, the people there carried their payroll with them, their pay book. We never carried it. Because I guess from what they say in the Army, that they would, in case they got separated, they meet another company, they got their pay book.
Right.
Where we didn't, they always came back. We had a guy that was going to go back to the States, so he hated us, so he shot himself in the leg, and here he comes back. You know, they say, you come back to where you go, where you've been, you're going to come back there again.
All right. So it's always the same company, though.
It's always the same company.
Okay. Now, what specific company did you belong to?
I was with M Company, which was a weapons company, mortars, machine guns. Then they transferred me to K Company, which was, M Company was heavy weapons, and K Company was just rifles and bazookas.
All right. Now, at the time you were on Bougainville, which company were you in?
I was with the K Company.
That's with K Company. Okay. All right. Now, your training, you said your training on Kwajalein is mostly swimming?
It's mostly that. There's nothing on there.
Yeah.
It's mostly swimming up there.
Okay. And then from there, then where do they send you?
Then from there we went to Guam.
Okay. Now, at this point, are you participating in the assault, or are you follow-up, or?
No, we went, our division was the first wave in Guam.
Mm-hmm.
And we, on the LSTs, I don't know how many carriers they had underneath there now, but the big jaws would open, you know, things like that. We went that way. So we were going into Guam, and we had two 50 caliber machine guns mounted in the front. And the sergeant says to me, Karp, he says, fire one of those machine guns. I said, I never fired 50 caliber. He said, oh, you're racking. I started shooting. I don't know if I hit anything or not, but I just had a lot of fun with it.
All right. Well, so did you go right up to the beach in the LST?
Yes.
Okay. Now, were there other Marines and smaller landing craft going in ahead of you?
Nope, we were the first ones in there. Our company was the first one in there, in our area.
Okay, in your area. Well, were there any Japanese shooting back?
Not till we got to the first hill.
Okay, so they're not resisting the actual landing, so you can go in and get ashore there. All right, and then once you hit the beach, then everybody out?
It was like a peaceful landing.
Okay.
Although some of our buddies, I remember one guy, they used to call him Bar Rag, that was laying on the beach there behind a coconut tree, and I said, come on, let's go. And I looked at him, he had part of his face blown off. But I don't know, there weren't that many casualties the first day.
Right. Okay. Now, had you had an artillery bombardment, or an air bombardment, or naval bombardment first?
No, yes, they did. They had one there. Now the one that really took a beating was 3rd Regiment.
Mm-hmm.
They were at their area was where the cliff was at, and they couldn't get in.
Mm-hmm.
They stayed. I guess they stayed in those little boats for probably 3, 4 days, 5 days before they finally could get in. Well, we went right in, and the 9th Regiment, 9th. Wait a minute, who was there? There was a K. First, second, third. The 3rd Battalion. We were in 3rd Battalion. 1st and 2nd Battalions were on our right-hand side. They got all in okay. 9th Marines, 9th Regiment was farther to the right. They got in okay, but the 3rd had a heck of a time getting in. But eventually they got in. Another story goes that some of the Marines got on top the cliff, and with 5-gallon cans of gasoline, and ignite them and swing them into the cliffs, and they got in okay then.
Okay, and why were they doing that? Was that to take out bunkers?
No, that's the only way they could get at them was from the cliff, because there's no way climbing up there. But they would get the 5-gallon cans, so the story goes, 5-gallon cans of gas, put a fuse on them, and swing them back and forth till they hit the outside of the cave, and they blow up. Mm-hmm. So that way, then the 9th, the 3rd landed.
Okay, well, let's follow you then. So you land initially, there's no opposition, you start going inland, and then what happens?
Well, we were inland, and we stayed up on, I was on top of a hill. And after that, it was pretty good. Then we started going farther inland, and we had patrol duty. And I was going along a little creek there, and somebody said, we heard a little rustle. We looked, and there was about 3 or 4 Japanese there. Well, the BAR took care of some of them, and the rifles took care of some of them. And then later on, the colonel gave us a citation for doing all that. Mm-hmm. In fact, it's in that little book I made. And that was my first encounter with the Japs. Mm-hmm. We never seen a Jap. And after so many days, we were up on the side of a hill, and a bonsai attack at night. And it was kind of rough then. We had casualties then. In fact, our company was, our platoon was so beat up that I was a private first class, and they made me a squad leader when they had 13 guys left. Mm-hmm. And then after that, then they found a corporal, and they made him the squad leader.
Great. Now, can you explain what a banzai attack is for an audience that doesn't know that?
Well, the story is that the Japanese would drink a lot of their booze or sake, and it gives them some extra power. And they always start attacking at night, and they would have you could hear them coming, and from then on, there's like all hell broke loose. We had our flares, we could see them, and the weapons were going like mad. All of our weapons. I was on the hill with my BAR, and I had ammunition carry with me, and I kept hollering, "Hey, I need more ammunition! I need more!" And he'd keep filling my thing up for me. And then after that, it quieted down. We went out there the next morning. No dead Japs. We hear stories that they pick up their dead and go. Then we had patrols that night, and I never went on a patrol, but we had a lieutenant by the name Archibald. That was he was blood and guts. In fact, I think he got the Navy Cross for Guam, and I think he got one for Iwo Jima. Mm-hmm. And he would take a patrol at night. And if it was a moonlit night, we had binoculars, we could see where they're going and all that. We had outposts. Every night we had sent an outpost out there, 3 guys, and we stay out there for a couple hours, then we get relieved, another 3 guys would come out there. And that'd be like maybe 100 yards in front of the front lines. Mm-hmm. And then they got kind of quiet after that. Then we did more maneuvering around there. And probably about 3 or 4 days later, we were in another area. We got hit again by bonsai, and we had Colonel Butler was the regimental commander. He came around and he talked to everybody there, and we were on top of a hill again, and they came from the bottom hill up. Mm-hmm. And some of the Japs didn't look like Japs. They were like big bruisers, like and they were 6 foot or something like that, heavy duties. Right. They had a name for them. I can't think what the name was. They were not considered from the Japanese island. I can't think what the name of those guys are called, but they're all good size, all good sized. So then we had a patrol that went out. We had a dog with us. We had a patrol went out on the bottom of the hill, and the dog, there was an opening in the hill. The dog kept barking and barking. So One of the guys, some guys threw grenades in there, but nothing happened. The dog still kept barking and barking. So they threw more grenades in there, and then the Japanese fell down. He had like a little ledge in there, and that's where he stayed at. And other than that, there wasn't. Oh yeah, it was kind of humorous too. You know, I had a telephone with me when you cranked up, you know, so it was raining that night. And you look around, the lightning would come, you look around, and you see all you see your helmet above the water, look at a bunch of mushrooms around there. So they crank up the phone, and laying in the water, and that thing hit me, and I just threw the phone out. And I picked it up, and they told me what they could do and all that. And but it was different though.
All right. Now, when they actually did attack you, did they ever get up to your lines, or did they always were they always beaten off by the fire?
No, they were pretty close to the lines, pretty close. In fact, we were the line. We were the line. The patrols would come back in, and or the patrols, the guys, well, what they were now? They were out there, and they'd come back in, and then we were the front lines.
Right.
But they would get from us maybe to probably the end of the building.
Okay.
Or something like that.
So they would get close, but they didn't actually get in among you.
They
so.
never came among us. No.
All right. Okay. Now, ultimately, Guam is a place that had been an American territory
Yes,
for
it
some
was.
time
Yes,
and
it
so
was.
forth, and there was
Yeah.
native population there and so forth that was normally more friendly to the Americans and so forth. Do things eventually kind of quiet down and you control the island pretty well?
It was after that. It was really quiet down. I got a little story about there was a Navy guy. There were 6 Navy people that 6 Navy personnel that went in the hills right after the Japanese landed. Well, they found 5 of them, and they beheaded them. And they did not find the other one. His name was George Tweed. They did not find him. So before they landed, George with the natives, there's some way or another, they could signal to the American ships as to what to do and all that. So from what I have been reading about and hearing, that the Japanese executed a lot of people that were helping those guys out.
Right.
So I was at the hall in here, one of the halls I belong to, and I was talking to a guy by the name of Paul Geldof. And Paul Geldof said, yeah, he said, I remember George Tweed. He was aboard the Navy ship, the McCall, and that's a ship that took George Tweed off. She said, he knew who George Tweed was. So.
All right. Okay. Now, did you see anything of the locals then after the native population?
Oh
there?
yeah. We've seen quite a few locals around there. Quite a few. In fact, there was a church we went to. All the statues had the heads knocked off, and they brought some captured Marines up there, captured the Navy guys, Japanese guys up there, and we had to stand guard over them. And we went on another patrol. We seen a lot of natives there where they took their testicles out and put them on their chests. They killed them and all that crap like that. And then we went on a patrol on the bottom of the cliff, and they always have I think I was corporal at that time. They always have a private, the first man leading, and then they have another one back them in the company. So I figured, what the hell, I might as well go up there, shit. So I went up there, and around a bend, here comes 6 Japs. So I dropped down, I started firing them. The other guy went back to the company, and they ran up there, they started firing, and they all went in, the 6 Japs ran in a cliff, and then they had a dumbass by me go in a cliff after them. That's when I got wounded. And I went up on top of the hill, and one of the guys said, Billy, said, you got blood on your leg here. And my jeans were torn. So I kept firing on the cliff there where they went in at the hole there, and firing away in there. And then later on, we found out there was 6 of them that they killed in there. They have a grenade that they bounce on the head and they throw it. It's like with a handle on it. Well, that's what got me in the leg.
Okay, so just kind of a piece of shrapnel from a grenade? Or?
Yes.
All right.
One good thing about it is 10%. That's $140 a month now.
All right. Okay. Now, did they take you to an aid station to get help?
I went down with the aid station. I went there. I stayed there maybe 4 or 5 days. Everything was okay. And then instead of going back to the company, they sent me to where the galley where the cooks were at. I spent a couple nights with the cooks. And that was my first taste of sake. And that, about 10 o'clock that night, I had cup full of sake. I get up next day at noon,
Mm-hmm.
and they're waking me up. We're leaving, and I'm still zonked out. That's it. And, you know, from then on, you can smell it.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody have a bottle of sake, you can smell it.
All right. Now you were leaving. Where were you going to now?
Well, let's see. After that, we stayed right on there.
Okay.
We didn't go back any other place. We stayed right there. It was
Okay.
pretty well secure.
Okay.
I
But
think it took about
they
20.
were telling you were leaving, so you were just moving on Guam. You weren't going to some other island at that
No,
point?
no, 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 no.
Okay.
We're staying right on Guam.
All right.
So we stayed on Guam, and of course, there's no place to go for liberty.
Mm-hmm.
We did our training on Guam.
Right. And did they set up more facilities on Guam? Because that becomes a major base. So does the USO come out, or Red Cross, or someone?
Yeah, they had. I don't remember if the Red Cross being, but I know they had. Well, they had the bakers and the cooks over there, and
Mm-hmm.
and they had the. We had tents over there. It was kind of peaceful after that.
Right.
But I forget how many days that was. We landed there, I'd say about, could have been the 22nd. I can't even think of the month now.
It's probably like about June or somewhere around there.
I think it was, yeah, I think it was June. So it was peaceful after
Yeah.
that.
And then the next engagement you're in was Iwo Jima, right?
Yes.
Okay. So you've got about 6 months or so there on Guam.
We had quite a bit of time on Guam before, because Iwo was in February of '45.
Right.
And Guam was 'cause I was wounded July 31st, 1944
Okay.
on Guam.
All right. Now, while you're there and you're on Guam and so forth, are you staying informed on what's happening in the rest of the war?
No, not that much, not
Okay.
that much.
And do you have much communication with people at home at that point?
Yeah, you wrote a letter if I get there in 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I got in that little book I got the V-mail.
Right.
And the V-mail was, they could put 10,000 letters on a spool, where it'd be cheaper than the other way.
Mm-hmm.
So I just kept that, my sister kept that for me.
Right. So you hear from them occasionally, but there's not a whole lot of back and forth.
No, there wasn't. In fact, nobody knew where Iwo Jima was at.
Mm-hmm.
Till later on I read about it,
Right.
and in fact, Chichijima was where George Bush, not the president, but the old man,
Mm-hmm.
where he was shot down. He was a Navy pilot. He was shot down, and he was rescued from there, from Chichijima. So you read about that later on, but
Right.
he probably didn't know where it was at either.
Oh, yeah. It's a tiny little place.
Who knew where they're at?
Okay. Now, how much did they give you any kind of special training or preparation for Iwo Jima, or they just load you up and send you off?
Well, there was nothing special.
Mm-hmm.
Back again to LSTs now. We were aboard LST,
All right.
sleeping on deck again.
Now, do you remember kind of seeing the more of the fleet going to Iwo Jima? Is this a big armada of ships?
Oh yeah,
that you're with?
that was kind of interesting. It looked like it was ships forever,
Mm-hmm.
all kinds there. And then we were floating around for I don't know how many days before we landed. And the story is that they bombed it for a month before, on and off periodical bombing. And 3 days before they gave it 24 hours a day,
Mm-hmm.
but still they couldn't get on there. So, but we were on there, and I think we got there like maybe 2 or 3 days later. In fact, I got a book on what Iwo Jima I was reading up on just to refresh my memory a little bit. I think it's about like 3 days later that we got there.
Okay. So your regiment lands as you're not part of the initial assault.
No,
So you're coming in later. So you're about 3 days into it. Now, but did you hear the bombardment when it was going on?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
you could hear it, yeah. I mean, when you got 16-inch guns on a Navy ship and they're 25 miles out, and you're underneath, you can hear it. You can hear all that bombardment, all the rockets and everything. You could hear them all.
Right. Okay. And so what was the situation at the point when you land? Were you taking any fire from shore, or was it quiet? Or
Nope, it was all quiet.
Mhm.
It was quiet.
And how would you describe the place? Do you remember what that looked like where you landed?
Yeah, it looked like all sand.
Mm-hmm.
You'd sink, like maybe ankles. That's all. Later on, it was all volcanic sand, from what you heard. And The weapons weren't worth a darn. You get one shot off. They're all semi-automatic, and they go one shot off, and they clog up from the dust. So then they start wrapping rags around them. And I was telling you, I think in that little book I mentioned about Suribachi.
Mm-hmm.
I forget, it was like maybe 5 days later, I may be wrong, when they raised the original, not the original flag, but the second flag.
Yep.
They had, so we were down at, not the base, but a little bit farther north of Suribachi.
Mm-hmm.
And the flag went up. And we didn't know whose flag it was. So somebody put the glass on it, took a look, it's the American flag. Man, well, you hear the cheering that went on. When they seen that flag, they knew the war was over.
Mm-hmm.
Or they knew that we won.
Yeah. Of course, there was still a lot of fighting left on Iwo Jima at that point.
There was a lot of it.
Because Suribachi was kind of on one end of the island, kind of one hilltop, and there was a larger part of it with more of the mountain area on the other side.
Yeah,
right?
they had one airport,
Mm-hmm.
and they had two airports. I think two, maybe three. I remember two airports being there.
Right. Yeah, I think there was a total of 3 airstrips, but they're all kind of next to each other. Okay. But you were kind of, was your unit now trying to go in after the rest of the Japanese?
Yes, we're slowly going in. We had, I say maybe 3 days later we got. I might be wrong on a date, but I say probably 3 days later when we finally landed, and we got in there, and we had to dig our foxholes. Our foxholes were not the kind that spread out. We had them digging where we could sit in there.
Mm-hmm.
If you spread them out, it gives you more chance of being hurt by artillery and all that. And some incidents that happened. I remember this one guy that jumped in his foxhole. We hit by rockets. He jumped in his foxhole. He had black hair. We come out, he had black and white hair. And another guy was putting on his jacket. It was cold on the island.
Mm-hmm.
Putting on his jacket, and he happened to put his finger up, and his finger blown off. Another guy was yawning. He got a bullet through his both cheeks. And you hear things, like say, you can tell people that, but I've seen those things happen.
Okay. So the Japanese are sort of hidden in various places?
And they were so you could not see them.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, they had their hotels underneath the ground. Like some of them was as deep as 3 stories. And I went in one time. It just was the first story, and that was it. And they were smart. They had years to prepare.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay. Now, would they kind of pop up behind you as you advanced?
they
or-
would do that on there. In fact, we were on Guam, and I was squad leader there, and we took a group out for a patrol. I had an Indian with me. And so we walked by, and all of a sudden a shot rang out, and the Indian was way back. He shot the Japanese popped out of a hole.
Mm-hmm.
And I told him why he did it. He said, well, anything I aim at, I kill. So anyway, right after we lost him,
Mm-hmm.
that's when they took him. They made the Navajo talkers.
Right.
They took all the Indians and made
Mhm.
Navajo talkers on them, which was good because they had the Japanese fooled. Japanese could not crack their code. In fact, they had a Navajo talker come to Grand Rapids here.
Mm-hmm.
I went and I got a book with the pictures on there, and they said this guy was in the 3rd Division, 21st Regiment, and I don't recognize those people now.
Okay. But you did see some of them yourself?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Now, how dangerous did Iwo Jima get for you?
Pretty close. In fact, we went on patrol and we looked and we can't go there because the mines all over. They had spider mines, little thumps sticking out with little feelers all over. Hit one of those feelers, you're gone. And they're pretty close there. In fact, we were going to one place and a tank went ahead of us, and there's shells were coming at them, and next thing you know that 4 guys running back. They said the tank just got blown. So they're pretty close there. And then every night, maybe 11 o'clock at night, we hear that zzz, zzz, zzz coming through the air. That's one of the big bombs that they would send from one end of the island to the other end of the island, but didn't do any damage. Every night about the same time it'd go.
Yeah, because at that point they really don't have the kind of Air Force that can do that much damage to you guys. I mean,
No, they didn't. The Air Force was not there. I think we control the Air Force.
Right. And now, did they have artillery or mortars hidden on the
Yes.
island, and they could use those on you?
They had them. They had them there.
And would they probe or attack your positions at night?
Mostly at night. Because they figured maybe we're having a good time at night partying or something, you know. But no, that's the most time they hit. In fact, there was a story there that I never seen it, but I heard They had like inside of a mound, they had a big door that would open up every night, and they'd leave artillery out of it, and they'd close it, but go back in again. And but ours, we had rockets aboard pickup trucks, and every so often they'd pull up next to us and let the rockets go. And I tell you, there was a lot of shooting on that island.
Okay. And now, how long were you kind of in a combat situation there?
I really don't remember. I'll say maybe up to the second airport, maybe. I'm not sure. In fact, I had some friends that were in M Company, because I was in M Company before, and I gave them all my personal stuff I had. I said, if something happens to me, that one guy knew my sister. And I said, if something happens to me, somebody's stuff will. But I fooled him. But then nothing happened, so I picked him up from the guy. In fact, we got back to the States and he gave me his stuff back.
Okay. Now, about what proportion of the men in your company do you think got killed or wounded on Iwo Jima?
A lot. And then, like I tell everybody, the reason why I did not get killed, because they say the Japanese, if your name is on a bullet, you get, and they couldn't spell my name.
Right.
That's why they couldn't kill me.
But it was just kind of almost luck of the draw at some point?
I think it was. I think if you're meant to go, you're going to go.
Okay.
Even here, if you're driving along, you're meant to have an accident, it's going to happen.
Now, now, what ends the Iwo Jima fighting for you? Do you get hit or just moved out, or what happens?
Like I say, I think I got to the second airport. Now, how I got off, I don't know. But I was aboard the hospital ship Solace.
Okay, so you got wounded at some point.
No, I wasn't wounded.
Okay.
I have no idea, unless they took a certain group off at a time and sent them back. And then we went back to, on Solace, we went back to Guam. And then we stayed on Guam, and they came around talking to us and about who's going to go back, and they didn't take anybody back. They left them all on Guam. Maybe at that time, oh geez, I don't know how many days they were on, or how many days were on Iwo. Maybe a month.
Something pretty close to that.
Something before it was secure. And it could have been maybe at that time they said, "Oh, we don't want to send any more back. We got all we need over here."
So were you there like a couple of weeks, do you think, or just a few days?
It could have been. It could have been maybe. It had to be about a week, at least that.
All right. Now, what kind of effect does being in that kind of combat for days in a row, what kind of effect does that have on the men in the unit? Guys who are still there, can you keep your morale up? And
Well, I think the morale had to be up, no matter how bad it was, because if it went down, they would have been gone. Like they say, once a Marine, always a Marine, and it's drilled into you, and that's it. So I guess that's why they had morale. Even that book I'm reading about Iwo Jima, it's like, I don't give a shit about anything, to hell with it. I'm here, I'm going to do my part, and that's it.
Now, did you have the same leaders? I mean, did your lieutenant or sergeants get hit?
Yeah, we had, Archambault was still there. Grassi was played end for Fordham football college. He stood about 5'8", but he could jump about 14 feet. That guy could really jump. And then Rockmore was killed, Captain Rockmore. He was killed on there. And we had Hines. Hines was our company commander. Nothing happened to him. And then Duplantis was the regimental commander. Wendell Duplantis, he was lieutenant colonel. He's one that, on Guam, he gave me my Purple Heart. And I can't think who else was on those. Arnold was there, but he came back. McKellar, he came back.
But you weren't in a situation where you like lost all of your leaders or things like that, and lower ranking men just had to take over?
You know, it's one thing about, I'm not really bragging on Marine Corps, but the Marine Corps was so trained that if a captain got killed, lieutenant took over.
Right.
Lieutenant was killed, the sergeant got killed, the private took over. That's how the training they had. Like when on Guam, I was a private first class. I had a squad for a while. What the hell am I going to? 20 years old?
Yep.
But no, No, I think it's the training they give them.
Right.
That you're never lost. You know, it's not like they tell me the stories are you read about Japan. If the what the head honchos get killed, the rest of them don't know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just what I read
Right.
about. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, that sometimes could happen if you lose the officer. Then.
If you lose the officers, you're lost. Where if we lost our officers, we weren't lost because we knew what to do.
Okay. Now, what impression did you yourself have of the Japanese? And what did you think of the Japanese soldiers?
Well, they had their training, and their training was die or don't come back.
Mm-hmm.
And ours wasn't. Our training was make sure they die, that
Right.
they don't come back. But so I don't know. I never really came across personally with them to talk or anything like that. Nothing
Right.
like that.
You
But-
did mention seeing some prisoners or something like that at some point.
That was on Guam.
Yeah.
On
Yeah.
Guam.
And what did they look like to you?
Well, they're like a little midgets. They're small. Except that one, I can't think what they call this here group on Guam that hit us with the second counterattack. Where they were big guys, really big guys. I wish I could think of the name of them.
All right.
Maybe I wrote it down in there. I don't know.
Now, you've gone back, so they've taken your company off of Iwo Jima and back to Guam, and now you take replacements there? Do they build you back up to strength, or?
There was replacements that came in. In fact, we had some. We were young squirts, 20, 21 years old. We had replacements come in at 29, 30, and they were old men.
Mm-hmm.
They couldn't keep up with us. And from Guam, from Iwo Jima to Guam, I don't remember how long we stayed on Guam. But after that, we went back to the United States.
Okay. And how do they get you back to the States?
Aboard a ship again.
Okay. Now, does your whole company go together, or just men from different units, or what happened?
I guess anybody that was available went.
Okay.
There were the Marine Corps headquarters in Washington. I wrote them asking about my life history.
Mm-hmm.
So they sent me my life history from the day I went in the Marine Corps till the day I was discharged.
Mm-hmm.
And they said all the ships that I was aboard.
Mm-hmm.
5 or 6 different ships, troop ships, the hospital ship, the Lure line.
Mm-hmm.
And I went on the internet to get pictures of them, and they all look alike, except the Lure line and the hospital ship. The only two that look different. In fact, we were leaving Iwo Jima, and the hospital ship was lit up, painted white with a big red cross on it.
Mm-hmm.
And you look around, you see all the Armada ships all the way around. So it was quite a sight, though, you know.
All right. Now, was the trip back to the States fairly quiet?
Yes, it was. It was quiet.
And then where do you land in the States?
I think it was San Pedro.
Okay.
We landed in San Pedro. Then we went to the Marine Corps base, and we called home.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when the captain came up to all those that were wounded. He said, "Fill out these papers now." So I filled out my papers.
Mm-hmm.
A good thing I did, because when I got discharged, I started getting my checks. $10 a month till now. Now it's big money. You know, $100-some odd
Sure.
a month is terrific.
All right.
So we filled them up, and I started getting my pension. So from there, from San Diego, I went to home, a 30-day furlough.
Okay, you got to leave. What was it like to go home after all that?
It's different.
Mm-hmm.
It's different. There you had better beer. Well, it was entirely different. Let's see. We went by train. Went by train from San Diego to Chicago, and the guy that was with me on Bougainville and Guam and Iwo Kielbasa. That might sound like a funny name because that's Polish sausage.
Yeah.
But that was his last
That really
name.
was his name.
He's from Chicago. So we were in Chicago. I was with him for a while, and then I forget how I got back to Muskegon. Probably by train.
Probably.
And I think my sister had a car. I think they picked me up at the train depot. I went home for 30 days. And I had my papers. I had my papers. I had a report to DeLand, Florida, Naval Air Station. So he was with me again, the same guy. We both met.
Okay. Now, while you were there at home those 30 days, did you have to make any adjustments to being a civilian temporarily? Change your language?
It's a little bit different. It's a little bit different. When you're in the military, you're under regimental command all the time, and you get home, it's different. It's entirely different. Even when I got discharged, it was entirely different.
Mm-hmm.
Then from home, I went to DeLand, Florida. I got there a couple days early because I don't want to be late for my assignment. So I went to land Florida. Oh, I was home on furlough. That's when the war ended in Europe.
Okay.
April something.
Yeah, like
45.
early May is when they surrendered.
So, when it ended in Europe.
Okay.
And then went down to Florida, to land Florida. We went training again, like always. It's swampy around there too, and same training, same hikes and everything.
Now, were you still in the same company, in the same unit at this point?
No,
or you're now just training?
This was a Naval Air Station. We were there as security at the Naval Air Station. Our captain was Bronner Smith, and he'd go through the same things like every other one did. You had to go on hikes, you had to do the series, you had to stand guard and everything like that. You had liberty every night and that. The closest town was, oh jeez, I can't name it, the closest town. But anyway, we did everything just like we did before. And then...
were you expecting to maybe have to go invade Japan, or...?
Well, they were thinking about, I guess, Korea at that time. And that was a long time before Korea. They were thinking about that. And then we're sitting there, and somebody had a newspaper about the atom bomb. And then about the second atom bomb. And, well, we knew it was going to be over then. So anyway, time for discharge. And when I went in as a reserve. If I went in as a regular, I would have had to stay my full 4 years. But I went in as a reserve. So at the time when the war ended, you had to have 95 points to get out. And I had 85, and my Purple Heart gave me 10. So they gave me 95.
Right.
And the captain called me in there, and he says, well, he says, time for discharge, you want to re-enlist? I said, give me another rate, I'll re-enlist. He said, I can't do that. He said, well, why do you want to re-enlist? I said, well, I like the killing people. I mean, that's a bunch of crap too, you know. But so anyway, they gave me my discharge papers. First of all, they gave me a separation paper, and somebody said to them, that's not the discharge paper. You got to write on my discharge paper. So then I got my discharge paper and went home by train. And I don't know what happened to the rest of the guys that were there. But we went by bus from the land Florida to Daytona Beach, I think it was. And there they had a Navy station around there someplace, and I went to the main gate there, and my same buddies that I was in the company with were stationed over there. I didn't even know about them. So then we went there, and from there we went by plane home. So that was the end of it.
Okay. And then, now that you've been discharged, what do you do?
Well, I put a few beers away. I weighed 175 pounds when I was discharged. I pretty nice muscular figure, you know. Then later on, everything shifted. It went down. The 44-inch chest went down to my waist, and just things like that. And they had the government had a program out there that they called 5220 for veterans. They could draw unemployment for 52 weeks at $20 a week. So my trade was printing. So I figured I'm not going to draw. I drew for 2 months. I figured that's enough. So I went. I got a job at the print shop, Shaw Walker's in Muskegon, and they had me running 2 Kluge presses. But I had to start like 3 days. So I went back to high school. I knew the printing teacher there. For 3 days, he gave me a crash course on those 3 presses, on the Kluge press. So I went back there, and hell, I was like an expert on the presses. So I stayed there for. I think I worked there about 2 years, 2.5 years. Then I was looking at the paper, and it said about if you want to be a waitress or a waiter, you got to have a high school education. I didn't have a high school education yet. So I went to the employment manager at Shaw Walker, but a guy named Woods, and I said, "Can I work half a day?" She said, "Yeah." I said, "I'm gonna go back to school, finish my school." He said, "Okay." So I went back and I finished my high school.
Okay.
That's right. I met her.
All right. So you just went. So you were attending like regular high school classes.
Regularly, I was attending 4 hours in the morning, working 4 hours at the shop in the at night.
That's right. Because you sort of left during your senior year, so you hadn't finished. Was that the?
Well, I left there when I got out of 9th grade.
Okay.
I left and I went to what they call Smith Hughes. printing class where you do printing in the afternoon, and in the morning you had all your subjects pertaining to printing.
Right.
Your mathematics, your English, and everything was art was pertaining to printing. In the afternoon you did printing.
And did any of that count as high school credit when you were doing that?
I got my diploma.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
All right. So now you've done that, and then how long do you kind of stay on as a printer?
Well, I had my own print shop 55 years.
Okay.
I worked at police department. I retired from police department, and all the time that I was on there, I was still in my print shop. In fact, it's just been with about maybe 4 or 5 years ago that I finally gave it up.
Okay. And which police department did you work for?
Grand Rapids.
Okay, Grand Rapids.
I retired from there. I came from another thing. I was sitting at one of the clubs in Muskegon, looking for a policeman in Grand Rapids.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, I'm going to go try it, and they took me.
Okay.
So I came over here. I was here about a year and a half. Then we got married in Muskegon. She's from Muskegon.
Mm-hmm.
And we got 65 coming up right now, pretty close. And we never argued. And no, it's been a pretty good life though.
Now, when you went out, were you still in the reserves at that point?
No, I wasn't. That was something. If I would have been in the reserves, if I would have, they discharged.
Right,
But the
okay.
regular ones they kept in for a
Right,
full term.
right.
They reserves are gone.
Mm-hmm.
So I was not. I didn't have to go for reserves.
Mm-hmm. And then you didn't sign on to continue in the
No, I
reserves?
did not.
and-
No,
okay,
I did
yeah.
not. Maybe I should have. I mean, I don't
Well,
know.
then they would have called you for Korea.
But no, I would have. But if I would have stayed in a regular, I know I'd have been in Korea.
Mm-hmm.
I know that. And then later on, if I would have stayed and served my 20 years, I would have been in Vietnam too.
Mm-hmm.
See. But then the more I think about it, you know, maybe I wouldn't have been there. You know, because it was a good life. I enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed every bit of my Marine Corps time.
All right.
And sometimes I'm sorry I didn't stay in, because I would have been 38 years old, retired at half pay. But it would have been much, because I started out at $21 a month, then it went up to 30, then went up to 50. When I was corporal, I was getting 66, and overseas I was getting 90. That was a lot of bucks, you know, at that time.
Yeah. Well, I think for a while there, and after the war and so forth, I'm not sure the wages kept up necessarily with the cost of living all that well.
No, but now they're paying pretty good.
Yeah, now they are. Yeah.
Like about $1,200 a month, maybe more. That's pretty good money.
Yeah. All right. Well, it makes for a good story. So I'd just like to thank you for coming in and sharing it with us today.
Anytime you get stuck, you want more information, call me.
All right.
I never seen such desolation. I think we drove for a mile and there wasn't a building hardly standing.
Nobody knew what was going on. They called the situation fluid, but fluid means that nobody knew anything.
It was different. If I had done something else, I don't know what I would have done.